The Stour Valley Path is a simple and easy long-distance path starting at the town of Newmarket and ending on the Suffolk coast at Cattawade. At just over 60 miles in length, it's perfect for beginners like myself. The path begins by the clock tower in the centre of Newmarket, a town made famous for its horse racing and considered the birthplace of the sport, with the racehorse industry starting here in 1309. The route follows the edge of the A1304 for a little over 2 miles before heading off into the Cambridgeshire countryside.
Well, it's definitely not been the most exciting start to the walk, but looking ahead at the map, that's the most extensive section of road walking along the entire route, so it's good to get it over with early on. And I've just crossed the boundary now into Cambridgeshire.
The next long straight follows almost 2.5 miles of the Devil's Ditch. This 7-mile-long ancient earthwork stretches from the Fens to Wood Ditton and is designated a Triple SI and Scheduled Ancient Monument. It is thought to date from the 6th or 7th century and built by the Anglo-Saxons and is the largest of a series of ancient dykes in Cambridgeshire. Walking along its ridge is very pleasant, with the relaxing views over the surrounding countryside, with the occasional section reaching 34 feet in height above the surrounding fields. This added height means that on a clear day it's possible to see the outline of Ely Cathedral 14 miles to the northwest.
Now it's been 5.5 miles since Newmarket, and I'm only now entering my first village. This is Stetchworth.
Stetchworth is a village with a population of only 700 in the civil parish of East Cambridgeshire. The pub is past as you head down into the tiny village centre and turn left to follow a road south.
Now for the last mile or so, we've actually been following 2 long-distance paths. There's the Stour Valley Way and also the Icknield Way. The Icknield Way actually starts down in Buckinghamshire and ends on the north border, way over that way. And the next 7 miles is actually shaping up to be quite rural. There's no villages met until we hit Little Thurlow.
Just ahead is Basefield Wood, which marks the highest point along the entire route at 115 metres above sea level. Sadly, the terrain around here is too flat for far-reaching views. I have yet to see the River Stour from which this long-distance trail gets its name, and looking at the map, the river appears to only be a couple of miles to the south, meaning it won't be long until I get my first glimpse of its flowing waters. This river marks a very significant waypoint along the route. This is my first encounter with the River Stour. From here on, we're coastbound. Little Bradley is the first hamlet encountered since Stetchworth, and the route passes the Church of All Saints, with its Saxon round tower and early Norman chancel. Up ahead is Little and Great Thurlow, 2 small neighbouring villages with beautiful public house dating from 1614. I'm heading south out of the village, passing the magnificent 18th century hall located behind the Church of All Saints. The church itself dates back much further and possibly has Norman origins. My path to Keddington runs parallel to the River Stour through Grazing Marsh and crosses the A143 Haverhill to Bury St Edmunds Road. This is the church of St Peter and St Paul in Keddington. It looks like a normal medieval church, but round on its east gable there is a Saxon cross dated to 900 AD. The history of the site may stretch further back, with reports of Roman mosaics being found below the nave in 1934. I'd have to say that for an opening stretch, this walk has been varied and remarkably rural. I really enjoyed the Saxon earthwork earlier, and visiting so many ancient churches has been a delight. There really is a rich hidden history to this part of East Anglia that's rarely talked about, and walking and visiting these sites really fires up the imagination. There's just as much to see over the next 46 miles.
Welcome to a beautiful early morning here in Keddington. Today my route takes me through a succession of quaint English villages that all relied on the river at some point, but also the railway that we'll see traces of. And my final destination today is Long Melford. It's about 15 miles.
The path heads south out of the village and runs parallel to the river. The river is starting to become more mature as it turns east near Wixow. A footbridge takes me over the river, and the path gently ascends to Boyton End before following the road to Baythorn Bridge, where I will rejoin the riverbank just past Baythorn Mill. The mill was built in the 18th century and is now a private dwelling. The route passes through Baythorn Park Estate, with Baythorn Hall standing proud on the hilltop. The estate recently went up for sale for a staggering £11 million back in 2017. Stoke by Clare is the first of several villages I'll be visiting today, and just across the river over there is Stoke College, a school which can trace its history back as far as 1415, when the College for Priests was founded on the site. Prior to that, evidence suggests that there was an Augustinian priory here from the 11th or 12th century. Just ahead is the medieval market town of Clare, and by far the most substantial settlement since Newmarket. There are shops, pubs, a ruined priory, and even has its own castle. Not bad for a town that boasts only 2,000 residents. Just to the south, on the other side of the Stour, are the enigmatic remains of Clare Priory, an Augustinian church founded in 1249. The castle dates from the Norman period and overlooks the entire town from its impressive 100-foot-high motte. Another historical treat are the Clare Castle Earthworks on the west side of town. The Stour Valley Path doesn't actually pass through the earthworks, but if time allows, a short visit is worth it for the aspiring archaeologist. With numerous surveys being completed and published over the years, we are still no closer to understanding the origins of the mysterious fortification. Its atypical location implies it's not Iron Age, but it's likely that we'll never know its true origin. Leaving Clare, the walk takes me across vast open fields on the north side of the Stour, with gentle hills gradually leading me down into the village of Cavendish. Having visited here many times in the past, it is one of my favourite villages, set out around a picturesque green. Many of the houses around the village date from the 16th and 17th centuries and are overflowing with character. It's only a mile or so to the next village, but unlike Clare and Cavendish, Melford is largely bypassed in favour of open countryside, which leads me down to cross the River Glem, one of the many tributaries of the River Stour. There are a couple of shops and pubs in the village, but a short detour is needed if you want to visit any of them. A gentle ascent leads me across Kentwell Downs to the spectacular 16th century Kentwell Hall with its beautiful ornate moated gardens. The hall is open to the public throughout the year and plays host to the annual Scaresville Halloween event, attracting thousands of visitors. On the south side of Kentwell Park is the magnificent Holy Trinity Church, a Grade 1 listed building dating to the late 15th century. With its cathedral-like structure and stonework, the church is sure to impress all those who come to visit. As I descend down into the village of Long Melford, I'm approaching the end of my second day along the Stour Valley Path, and what an enjoyable day it has been. I'm starting today's walk in the picturesque village of Long Melford in Suffolk. The village has its roots dating back to the Roman period, but I'm here to admire the medieval architecture before making my way south in the direction of Sudbury. Heading out of the village, the route takes me across open grazing fields to the weir at Liston Mill. The River Stour here marks the county boundary for Essex, making this the third county I've walked in along the route. It feels a shame to be leaving Long Melford so soon. It really is a beautiful, quaint English village, but we've got quite a long walk ahead of us today and there's still plenty more to see. I've just joined the valley walk here at Lodbridge. It follows the old railway line that links surrounding villages to Sudbury. It's a popular route through a precious conservation area, which includes the Water Meadows, which we'll see up ahead shortly. Passing the 18th century Brundon Mill, the path crosses grazing water meadows. These meadows are really important to a vast array of wildlife, including the species of dragonfly and damselfly, as well as rare species of birds like the kingfisher, which can be seen fishing from overhanging branches. This large white building here is the Mill Hotel, a watermill dating to the 19th century. According to the Domesday Book, a mill's been located here for at least 1,000 years and likely has Saxon origins. Heading south away from the water meadows, I pass along Ballingdon to pick up a path south skirting the village of Middleton and aiming for the spired church of Great Henny. My route to the church takes me over gentle undulating hills and offers some of the best views so far of the Stour Valley to the east. St Mary's Church in Great Henny is a beautiful 11th century spired church, sitting amongst vast open fields, giving it a real secluded and tranquil feel. A few more gentle undulating hills leads me down to the tiny hamlet of La Marche, with its spired 12th century church and nearby moat to a former manor house. The Stour Valley Path passes over the Sudbury to Markstade rail link and follows a trackway which runs parallel to the river, with numerous World War II remains along its bank.
Just across the field over there is a pillbox, and it's one of 5 dotted along the riverbank between La Marche and Bures. Although no real use today, they do stand as a monument to those who fought in the war all those years ago.
This little village is Bures, and it's a beautiful place to stop for some lunch. It's also where I crossed the Stour a couple of times, briefly into Suffolk and then back into Essex at Bures Mill. The history of the mill is largely unknown, but believed to have been built sometime in the early 18th century. Ahead is Wormingford, and on the village's north side is the beautiful stately home called Smallbridge Hall. Built in the mid-16th century, the hall overlooks the River Stour, with its moat being fed from its waters. The church in the village is passed along the route, which has Norman origins, and the path continues east past several small lakes.
About a mile or so ahead is the village of Nayland. My final destination is the penultimate part of the Stour Valley Path. I'm now deep into Dedham Vale area of outstanding natural beauty, and this is Constable Country.
Knowing this area quite well, I can say I'm really looking forward to the last section, with places like Stoke by Nayland, Dedham Vale and Flatford all being visited. Welcome to the final day's walk on the Stour Valley Path. I'm here in the village of Nayland, which sits on the edge of the River Stour, and heading coastbound, keeping deep within the Dedham Vale area of outstanding natural beauty, and visiting some of the prettiest villages along the way. I'm heading north out of the village, following quiet country lanes to Stoke by Nayland, another beautiful Suffolk village surrounded by gentle hills and medieval timber-framed houses. It's along here that the River Box is briefly followed, but quickly forded in favour of open countryside near Withermarsh Green and beautiful views of the Stour Valley to the south. Thorrington Street is bypassed as the route heads down to the very bottom of the Stour Valley and rejoins the riverbank just before Stratford St Mary. The Black Horse pub is passed in Stratford St Mary and perfectly located for a spot of lunch along the way before a long riverbank section up ahead. The path passes under the roaring A12 and heads east to Dedham Bridge, just a mile up ahead.
I've just joined the riverbank section here at Stratford St Mary, and this is the longest section of riverbank walking along the entire route. It's 2.5 miles to Flatford Mill.
The riverbanks between here and Flatford are popular with walkers and picnickers, all made famous by the legendary painter John Constable. Owned and managed by the National Trust, the mill was built in 1733 and made famous by the celebrated painter John Constable, with many of his paintings in the National Gallery and the Victoria and Albert Museum. The final mile or two past Flatford marks the end of this walk. To the south are Cattawade Marshes and to the east is the estuary. The marshes are managed by the RSPB and form part of a protected sanctuary for rare birds and wildlife. It seems slightly unfortunate that the walk ends here at the picnic site at Cattawade, as there's no hint as to how close you are to the estuary just across the road. So I'm continuing south just a little further to end my walk on the edge of the salt marsh of the Stour Estuary. Having followed the River Stour for 62 miles from its catchment area in the Cambridgeshire countryside, through farmland, grazing marsh, quaint villages and constable country, to the coast here at Cattawade, this walk offers a fair amount in just 4 days, and it's been worth every step, all 144,000 of them.